The Hebrew is explicitly clear. It says, behold, the young woman is pregnant. So if I say to you, hand me a book, that means any book at random. If I say, give me the book, that means you and I both know which book I'm talking about because I said the book. So if it's the young woman, you and I both know which woman I'm talking about. Somehow I don't think Ahaz is going to think of a woman living 700 years after Ahaz himself is dead and buried. It also goes on to say in verse 7, the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end. When did Jesus run a government? Jesus explicitly said, I came not to bring peace, I came to bring a sword. I came to set every man against his father, every woman against her mother, every daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and your enemies will be those of your own household. What a nice guy. And remember, he didn't say this will be the effect of believing in me. He said, this is why I'm coming, not to bring peace, but to bring a sword.
TaNaCh Talk. I'm the host, William Hall, broadcasting live Texas, USA, with another episode of TNT Twisted New Testament with Rabbi Stuart and Federow. Welcome back. How are you this
fine evening?
This fairly fine evening, yes.
Yes. I guess I'm doing fine.
Good?
Yep.
Good. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to start off with first of all, the phone lines are going to be opened up for callers for questions. I want to start off with boycott watches, but all the rest of them after that should be callers if that works out for you guys. So again, if somebody puts a question in chat, but they can't call or doesn't want to call, maybe someone else would like to call in for them. Would be a good option. Okay, so here we go. This is perfect time anyway. Hanukkah's coming up. December 25th is the first day of Hanukkah, which is Christmas Day, which will be ultra confusing.
Well, the Christmas night of the 25th is the first candle. The first day becomes the 26th.
Okay, cool. It's still,
starts the 24th.
Christians believe that the new day starts at midnight, not at sunset. So same thing. So again, boycott watch. Why did you use Hanukkah, the festival of lights? And we'll stop with that right there. And we'll just have you discuss what Hanukkah's primary meanings for, how it went from one thing to another, how the original. In fact, this is a good learning curve for everybody. Discuss the original Hanukkah, and then how we celebrate it today, or how even Jews celebrate it today. If you have any insight on that.
Well, it's how the Jews have been celebrating it for, give or take, 2,200 years. I'm bad at math. So 165 and 24, 6, 7, 8. So 2,190 something. I can't do the math. Years ago is when the events of Hanukkah, which are historical. I mean, this is a historical event. This isn't, made up or taken on faith. This is history. So just real quick, all you have to do is pick up the non-biblical texts of 1st and 2nd Maccabees, and you'll see the story laid out there pretty well, with a couple of interesting things a lot of Jews don't even realize. But it's right there if you want to read it. So give or take 2,200 years ago. Now let's go back 300 years before that. 350, let's say, is 2,370 years, give or take. You had Alexander the Great took over the known world. Alexander the Great died, and he had no heirs to, hand over the empire to. So 3 generals took over from Alexander the Great when Alexander the Great died. The base of their operations, Alexander the Great was Greek. So you have Greece, you have Syria, and you have Egypt. These were the bases of the 3 generals who took over ruling the empire of Alexander the Great when he died. Now, you're talking 200 years, give or take. So we're talking 10 generations. You have a ruler rising over Greece. You have a ruler rising over Syria. And you have a ruler rising over Egypt. And these places were the central government for their area of the third that they governed of Alexander the Great's empire. So Antiochus the third, one of them felt that he was the reincarnation of Alexander the Great. Not his grandfather or great whatever, the general, but Alexander the Great. So he started waging war against the government located in Greece and the government located in Egypt. And I got to tell you, by this time, the government centralized in Greece was really not that hard to defeat. So Antiochus moves on Greece and pretty well wins. And then he's got to figure out how to defeat Egypt. So he marches a huge army, including elephants, by the way, and obviously you got to go through the promised land. So on the way through the promised land, he notes this funny little weird religious institution, the temple, to a god that they can't even see, a god that they don't even have images of. But he takes note because there's a whole lot of gold and silver involved in the temple. After a war with Egypt, his fighting is over. Well, the funny thing about fighting is when the wars are over, you now have to pay your troops. So on the way back to Syria, Antiochus sacks the temple, takes the gold and silver from it in order to pay his soldiers. Once he's back in Syria, now he's got a really big problem. And that is, how do you control the empire without rebellions here and there? And so what he does, and this represents the first time in history you have this, he tries to unify his empire with religion. He tries to make everybody worshipers, and he promoted Zeus to like the number one head. Yeah, there were other gods, but he wanted everybody to worship Zeus. And in the ancient world, who cares? You got your gods, we got our gods, we got multiple gods, you got your multiple gods, and pantheon. Pan, across the board, theon, like theo, like theos, like gods. Across the board gods. So sort of think of it as a way to have a list of acceptable gods to, well, in this case, Syria, to Greece. So Antiochus comes to the various locales all across his now unified kingdom and says, we want you to worship Zeus as your number one god. And if you do so, and you become obedient to Zeus and Zeus worship, we'll put your various gods on our list of acceptable gods. What could be wrong with that, since they're polytheists? They're not monotheists. They don't care. So rather than have the wrath of Syria, who just won against Greece and Egypt, they say, fine, we'll do it, except for one people. Guess who that is? The Jews did not like the idea. The Jews didn't like the idea of worshiping Zeus or any other god. However, a very significant chunk of the Jewish people within the empire, now run by Antiochus, really like Greek culture. Not necessarily Greek religion, but they really like Greek culture. They liked philosophy. They liked the Olympics and competition. They liked the baths, all the things that came with the Hellenist culture. And many of them couldn't have cared less about the religion and wanted the culture. And so they became very assimilated. Meanwhile, Antiochus is still trying to centralize his power across the empire. So he sends a wide variety of soldiers throughout his entire kingdom. And that includes the promised land, and that includes Israel, and that includes, to all the people therein. So according to the story, soldiers are sent to the promised land, and that includes all towns, and that includes En. Modi'in is a city that still exists west of Jerusalem, and basically their technique is to go to the leadership of the town and get them to worship Zeus, and then if they do it, all the other people who have them as leaders will also follow suit. So the soldiers come to Modi'in. They find an elder whose name is Mattathias, who has sons, and the soldiers say to Mattathias, we want you to worship a pig in the town square to Zeus. Now, let's be clear about something, which you should know from Jewish sacrifices in the temple. Most of the sacrifices, which had nothing to do with sin, but most of the sacrifices, if you'll pardon the expression, the simplistic way I'm explaining this, are like the down-the-block kosher butcher. You bring your meat to the butcher, he slaughters it for you, he gets his piece of the cut of the meat, and then you take the rest back for a festival meal of the sacrifice. So the idea is, if you sacrifice something to, God or gods, then you're going to be eating part of it. Which means that Mattathias would be required not only to sacrifice to an idol, to Zeus, to a false god, he would also be required to eat the pig sacrifice. He refuses. Now, you would think that the soldiers, if Mattathias is asked to do something and refuses, then they're going to kill him, and then maybe the next person won't refuse. But they don't do that. Why? Because they'll find some other elder who's Jewish who's going to be willing to sacrifice a pig to Zeus. So if Mattathias doesn't do it, as a Jewish leader, they'll get another Jewish leader to do it, which is what they did. Mattathias sees this. He gets incensed and he kills the Jew who was actually going to sacrifice the pig to Zeus in the town square, and he also kills the Syrian soldier. And then he says, basically, if you're on the side of God, come with me, and they flee into the hills, and he brings with him his sons, which included Judah the Maccabee. He's called Maccabee for two reasons, or two reasons are given. But one reason is that Maccabee means hammer, and he's very strong, and he hits people like a hammer. I think there's a better reason than that, and that is, what's the whole point? The whole point of rebelling against Syria, against Antiochus and his rule, is that there's only one God. They're not going to worship, pagan idols. And in Deuteronomy, they cross the Sea of Reeds, and what do the children of Israel sing? Mi chamocha ba'elim, God, mi chamo nedar ba'kodesh, norati hilot osef ele. So, who is like you among the gods? And if you take the first letter of those first four words, you get Maccabee. Mi, kamocha, ba'elim. Maccabee. Remembering that the name for God begins with a yud, that's the yud on the end of Maccabee. Who is like you, O God, among the gods that are worshipped? At any rate, they start doing what we now in the modern world call guerrilla warfare. They stay in the hills, hiding, swoop down, do their damage against the enemy, and go back. And it's a very unusual form. It's actually a very difficult form of war to fight against. You don't know where they are. You don't know where they're going to show up. They do their damage and they go hide again. So it's a very difficult kind of war to wage. Now, for those, and I urge you to read Maccabees, the non-biblical works in what's called the Apocrypha, you'll find out something interesting. Start over. Most people think that when the temple was taken over by the Maccabees, it was at the end of the war. Not at all true. It was about after the end of the first year, they got the temple back, give or take the first year. And when and here's where you get some interesting characteristics. Because of the rebellion by the Maccabees against the Syrian soldiers, according to the books of Maccabees, the Jews didn't have an ability to celebrate Sukkot, Feast of Booths, Festival of Tabernacles. And when they took back the temple, even though it wasn't the right time, even though it wasn't the right whatever, they decided to celebrate Sukkot because they felt they got robbed of it when the war started, basically. So how do you celebrate Sukkot? It's 8 days long. Sound familiar? It's 8 days long. And what they did is they took spears, put flammables on the top of the spear, and for 8 days they lit the fire, and celebrated Sukkot. And when Sukkot 8 days were over, they went back to fighting for years. And they continued to do this guerrilla warfare. And, we tend not to want to talk about it, but the truth of the matter is a lot of their fighting was civil war, Jew against Jew. Jews who really wanted to be Hellenized and go follow Zeus and Syria, Greco-Syrian culture, and the Jews who held strong to their faith. Now, at this time, you had another power growing in that part of the world. Syria had already defeated Greece. Syria had already defeated Egypt. The power that was rising, that Syria was becoming more and more afraid of, was Rome. And as Rome started to get more and more powerful, Syria decided, maybe we better turn our attention to Rome and let this insignificant little country on the east side of the Mediterranean, just let them get out of our way. So basically, they went to the peace table with the Maccabees, and the Promised Land became a, what's it called? Where they a tributary of Syria, where every year they paid enough money and Syria would let them alone, allowing them to worship God and to continue, because they never stopped once they rededicated the temple back to the one true God, and they never stopped, with being in the temple. Now, notice that I did not say a single word about lights, about one flask of oil that is, going to last for 8 days instead of only 1 day. Now, if you want to go to Leviticus 24, you don't have to bring it up, William. I'm just saying. You'll find basically a description of lighting the big candelabra, shall we say, in the temple. Now, in order to have, when we light, how do I explain this? What is like when people think of the Sabbath, what's the number one thing they think of not doing? Lighting a fire. So if you have a candle, or an oil lamp, and the oil is not pure, or for that matter, the wax is not pure, and you light it, the impurities in the oil are going to cause the light to flicker, to go on, like this. What's the problem with that? The problem with that is that when it goes back on, it's lighting a fire. So in order to make sure that the oil is pure and it is not going to flicker, you have to do what we now call, like with milk, you have to homogenize it. You have to blend it. And the way to do that is to beat the oil, is to whip the oil and get the impurities out and to homogenize it. And that's what prevents the light from flickering. So you had to have prepared oil. And according to tradition, it took 8 days to get the oil purified. Now, Rome takes over the Promised Land about the year 64 BCE. So 64 BCE, Rome is now governing the land. Syria and its military is nothing. And Rome controls the land. Rome was absolutely bloodthirsty. If there was even an inkling, a thought in a person's brain of rebellion, you were dead, and you were dead in a very unpleasant way. So 300 years, give or take, later, in the Talmud, it's discussing Hanukkah. And that's where you get the first rendition of the oil that lasted 8 days instead of only 1 day. And what does it say? It begins with a question, What is this Hanukkah? And the answer that immediately follows it, kind of like a catechism, by the way, question, answer, question, answer. So you have this question, what is Hanukkah? And then it has the answer, and it gives the history of the candles that lasted, the oil lamp that lasted 8 days. It should have only lasted 1 day. Saving the Jewish people. That simple act, that simple story, prevented the Jews from being wiped out by Rome. Why? So a soldier comes by and sees family lighting the Hanukkah menorah in commemoration with rededicating the temple back to the one and only true God. And the soldier says, hey, that's pretty cool, lighting candles. We do that in my religion. Every religion has lighting candles, especially in the winter. We'll get to that in a minute. So the family says, oh yeah, this commemorates the rebellion of the Jews against Syria, the ruling power. You really think that Rome wants to hear that? Rome is not going to tolerate an inkling of rebellion against Rome. But Rome can understand miracle stories. So the rabbis, saving the Jewish people, created this story, legend, about the lighting of the candles. Now, some people, most Jews, are going to be really upset to hear that, because I'm taking away their Hanukkah. I'm not taking away their Hanukkah. I'm talking history. And I'm talking saving the Jewish people from annihilation by Rome, because they're talking about miracles instead of rebellion against the ruling power Rome would not have tolerated. So that's where you get the story of the oil lasting 8 days. It should have only lasted 1 day. There's a great meme, how to explain Hanukkah in the modern world. It's like charging your phone that lasts 8 days instead of 1 day, So from that period on, from the Talmudic times, Hag Urim, the festival of lights. Now, let me remind you that when the Jews, according to the book of Maccabees, were celebrating once again Sukkot, which is an 8-day holiday, they took their 8 spears and made them into torches, basically. Light producing. Every single religion that I can name has something in the winter months, especially around the winter solstice, that celebrates light, And I mean every religion. Aborigines in whatever. Why is this a common theme? Because in the winter, the days get shorter, which means the sun appears to be disappearing, going away, and about, 3 or 4 days after the solstice, on the 20th or 21st of December, all of a sudden they realize, hey, wait a minute, the days are now getting longer. So light, indicating the length of the day, and an agricultural culture, light and sunlight is very important to the growth of plants to eat, they celebrate when they can tell that the days are getting longer again. So every religion has something to do with light, especially around December 20th, 21st, 25th, somewhere around there, because that's when they realized, hey, the sun's coming back. It's not leaving us. So 2,000 years, the Jewish community has been celebrating, lighting the Hanukkah, lighting the Hanukkah menorah, whichever terminology you'd prefer to use. So when he says, why did Jews keep calling Hanukkah the Festival of Lights? It's because that's our version of the importance of expressing the importance of light and the days getting longer when the winter's, the middle of the winter months. Okay. And Boycott Watch, when you say we never celebrate lights, how are we supposed to celebrate it other than the way we're celebrating it? When we light the Hanukkah, when we light the Hanukkah menorah, okay, Hillel and Shammai had a disagreement. Shammai said, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 lights. Hillel said, no, light should increase in Israel, that, joy and light increase. By the way, if you take a look at the Bible, do a search in a Bible program on light. I mean, there are billions and trillions of analogies in verses in the Hebrew scriptures. The law is the lamp, and now I can't remember, old man. The soul of man is the light of God, the lamp of God. I mean, there are, I don't know how many verses that use light as an analogy, okay, as a metaphor for something. So the Jewish community has been celebrating Hanukkah since 2,000 years ago, give or take a few hundred, and it's always been lighting the Hanukkah, okay, whether it's referencing the miracle story of the oil, or even before that, the spears into torches of the rededication of the temple back to the one and only God on the entire planet. So I'm not quite sure what you're looking for when you say we never celebrate lights, because lighting the lights of the Hanukkah is the basis of the celebration. And I would argue, Christianity didn't really want to celebrate the birth of Jesus for hundreds and hundreds of years. Christmas in the early what became the United States was outlawed in some states, or what became states. So I'm not sure you could say that Judaism is blurring the lines between Christianity and Judaism by lighting the Hanukkah or calling the holiday the Festival of Lights.
I think the American holidays for birthdays started around the 1600s or something like that, or early 1700s or something.
Right, but you've got indications of celebrating of birthdays in the biblical period. I think that the celebration of Shmei Rosh in the book of Esther, I think that he was celebrating a birthday, I think. I have to look it up again, I don't remember. But so birthdays have been celebrated, but Christmas as the birthday of their God, small g, is not that far back. If anybody's doing anything about copying, it's the Christians are copying the Jews by calling, lights with their holiday.
Sure. Okay.
In my never to be humble opinion.
Sure. Okay. We're going to go and move on to a caller. Right now we've got Rob from North Carolina.
By the way,
let me
interrupt one more time.
Go ahead. Rob, sit tight. I'll be right with you.
Sorry, this will take 15 seconds. There are a lot of Jews who are going to hear what I just said, and they're going to be really pissed off because I'm knocking a hole in their Hanukkah celebration. But that doesn't change the celebration. Okay, we're still celebrating the lights, and we're still celebrating freedom, and we're still celebrating the world's first fight for religious freedom, where the war was not based on land or resources, but on freedom of religion. So keep that in mind.
Okay. All right. Mr. Rob, you are live on the air. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Good evening, you guys. Thank you very much for taking my call. And Rabbi, I just want to thank you very much for all that you do as well.
I try my best. Thank you.
And I also want to give Hashem all glory, honor, and praise in his mercy for allowing us to be able to come out of this idolatry.
Amen.
Amen.
My
May it
question
continue and increase.
is, Amen. Matthew 16 and Luke 9 about, verily I say unto you, there will be some standing here who shall not taste of death until they see the kingdom come.
Right.
Matthew adds Son of Man, which seems like a subtle addition, but it really isn't. But it kind of helps us in our plight in working through this, going to Psalm 146:3. But I had a lighthearted moment last Shabbat in my studies in coming across this and thinking about it, and I recalled a little comedic sketch many years ago with two famous men about the 2,000-year-old man.
Oh, yeah.
That was just, and I pondered, it's like, were they referring to this and exposing? But I just...
No, that was a Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. Yeah, skit. Yeah. That's brilliant and funny.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, we'll talk about this false prophecy. You can hang up now and tune in for this conversation.
Well, do you have a specific question?
Well, I just wanted to bring up that lighthearted thing, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts and all that. It seems that Son of Man is kind of the way the New Testament skirts around polytheism.
Right.
Very good. Okay, well, go ahead and hang them down and tune in for the talk. Thanks. Appreciate it. All right.
Son of Man is a...
So I would say, as far as that goes, we can discuss other things that Jesus said that didn't quite pan out.
Yeah. We did a whole evening on the lies of Jesus, I think.
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. But Son of Man is an epithet in Daniel, but it's found in other places. And Son of a Man means a human being. Ben Adam, that means a human being, as opposed to, I don't know what. That's really the usage of it. In Daniel, it sounds like it's becoming a title, okay? And that's what you get, in Matthew 12, and it starts becoming a real title for the Messiah within Christianity. It really just means a human being, the son of a man, a male, a man. We are all children of men, children of women. So, yeah.
So he was called Son of Man, I think, over 83 times in the New Testament. And was it Psalms? I think it's Psalms. It says, do not
put your trust in the Son of Man.
Yeah, in the Son of Man. Princes in the Son of Man, in whom there is no salvation. So
right.
I was like, did Christianity see that verse?
Yes. And by the way, they try to get around his point of there are those of us here who will not taste of death until the Son of Man or whatever comes in his glory, comes in his kingdom, whatever. And they're still waiting for a second coming, which if you count might be a third coming. But at any rate, the point is that everything he describes and what that kingdom coming is supposed to have been didn't happen. Oops.
So we got another caller. Let me go ahead and switch over to this one. If you have found this channel helpful and this has blessed you or your family members in helping bring you out of idolatry, I would love to have your support. Please consider donating to this channel directly. That would be pretty awesome. Donations can be done through PayPal, Patreon, or through snail mail. The links to all are added in the video description below. You can also click this link and it will take you straight to my website with a donate button, which leads you right through PayPal. Thank you once again for your kindness and consideration for supporting this work. Blessings for you, your family, and your home. Shalom. Jonathan from Houston, Texas. You are live on the air.
Oh, hello. Hi.
Go ahead when you're ready.
Oh, yes. When I first popped up, I made a question. I saw you speak on the Sabbath. It was not to that point, and much less now that you were continuing. I'm assuming I'm off point. But now that I have the blessing of you guys taking my call, thank you very much. Thank you both. I'd like to understand more of my thoughts. This is the first time that I've spoken of these things other than just hearing it in my head. If you could help me, I understand that the Mormons are told you messed up by adding to the book, and the Christians are told you messed up by adding to the book. And I wonder, there must have been people before Joshua, I believe, the next book after Moses finished writing,
Sure.
Somebody said, you're not supposed to add to the book. I just wonder, there was one point after the Promised Land was reached where things were being followed by and exactly as Moses had written. And I don't know, but as I understand, the rules were followed up until Moses' replacement, I suppose, died. And I figured that at the point that the next book was going to be added, I'm assuming several, at least 100, maybe 1,000 years, I don't know, that somebody argued we shouldn't add anymore. This is important stuff, but we should not add.
So what you're saying is we should only have the Torah only. We shouldn't have the prophets and the Ketuvim, right? Because that's adding.
I believe that everything gets covered with the 5 books of Moses. Everything gets covered.
Okay, that's it. That's a good conversation. We'll take it from here. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's an interesting point, but of course, the only thing that's not covered in the Torah is obviously the prophets that we need to warn us against idolatry. So that
right. Not to mention,
Rabbi, go ahead and take this. I'm going to take this. Oh, they just hung up.
All right. Well, okay. My problem with what he's saying is that it's our history, and in Judaism, the prophets don't have the authority of the writings, and they certainly don't have the start over. The TaNaCh, the prophets and the writings don't have the authority of the Torah. The Torah is the ultimate authority. Okay, so we have to maintain our history and learn from it and teach it, etc. But it's not replacing or being used to add to the Torah. It is, for lack of a better term, honored because it's the history of our people.
Okay, so what about like Hanukkah, for example, because that's not mentioned in the Torah?
Right, but it's a historical event.
Sure.
I mean, if he had it his way, what he sounds like is he wants the Jews to still wear a robe and sandals because slacks and a jacket are not mentioned in the Bible.
Right.
I mean, there are social conventions that continue, but because covered-toed shoes aren't mentioned in the Bible, then are we not supposed to wear covered-toed shoes? We're not supposed to wear tennis shoes because tennis shoes aren't mentioned in the Bible? We're not supposed to wear a tie and jacket because a tie and jacket are not mentioned in the Bible? Come on.
Right.
I mean, are we supposed to be relegated? Do you really think that Christianity is the religion of the New Testament? No. It's a religion of a 2,024-year history of interpretation of the Christian New Testament, okay? Not every denomination of Christianity baptizes the same way. They take what is in their scripture, the Christian New Testament, and interpret it to do it the way they have it done. So the Baptists get in the water completely submerged and fall backwards. Where's that in the New Testament? Oh, they're adding to the word. They're the religion of men because men invented this idea that you fall backwards. Don't fall backwards. So I'm not quite sure how far he wants to take this, what it means to add to the Bible. And we don't add to it. We don't change it. That's the whole point. What we were thinking of discussing tonight was the Masoretic text as opposed to the Septuagint, as opposed to the Dead Sea Scrolls. But I'm glad we didn't because that's really not my field. It's out of my... I mean, I understand it a little bit, but I can't explain it very well.
No, that was fair enough. I mean, I think for me, I think you said it as good as I could have said it, even better, because the Torah itself, I mean, even the oral law, anywhere there is something in the oral law, it's based on what's written in the Torah.
Right.
It's not a new creation or nothing added. It's just more highly defined as to what it is. And as far as the prophets and the writings, those, like you said, the historical things we need to understand the context of the Jewish people, Jewish history. And so they're not adding to it. That's the short answer, So I think it works.
Right.
So, okay, we'll take the next caller. This is Jason from Texas. Jason, you are live on the air. Go ahead and state your question to the rabbi.
Yes. From my understanding in rabbinical Judaism, Isaiah 9:6 is referring to Hezekiah.
Yep.
But just looking at the scriptures, I don't believe Hezekiah even meets close to any of those prerequisites that's there in Isaiah.
So you would basically just like to have a better explanation of Isaiah 9:6.
Yes, I'm a Christian, a monotheistic Christian. I
Okay.
don't believe in the Trinity or anything like that. So I believe that's referring to the Messiah, which is, I believe is Jesus.
So you do believe in Isaiah 7:14 is talking about a virgin birth and such, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Okay, good. Okay, we'll take it from here. Thank you so much for your call, and we'll finish up the show using your question. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. You very much. Thanks. Cool. All right. So it starts with the virgin birth and then is confirmed by 9:6. The son is given.
First of all, he made a statement that I picked up on that I want to respond to.
Okay, sure.
He's talking about rabbinic Judaism.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Right.
There is no Judaism except for rabbinic Judaism. If a quote-unquote Judaism isn't rabbinic, it's not Judaism. Okay? There were Pharisees, Sadducees, Zealots, and Essenes 2,000 years ago. This was the form that Judaism took. You were Pharisaic, you were Sadducean, you were Zealot, or you were Essene. Well, according to God, the only one of the four that God wanted to continue was the Pharisees that developed into what we call rabbinic Judaism, which is the only form of Judaism today. Okay, every single real Judaism is rabbinic. You can't get away from that. Okay, like I said, the lighting of the Hanukkah, okay, which may reflect the lighting of the seven candles, seven lights of the regular normal temple menorah, okay, which has 9 instead of 7, is rabbinic. The story is found in the Talmud. That's rabbinic. Okay. Talit, if they're wearing a talit, they're rabbinic. Okay. If they have a mezuzah on their doorpost, they're rabbinic. If they wear a yarmulke, okay, they're rabbinic. Show me the evidence that the children of Solomon, each one wore a yarmulke. That may be in tradition, okay, but I don't think the word yarmulke or kippah or whatever is found in the Hebrew scriptures.
Okay, Eli, are you there?
So all Judaism is rabbinic. Don't say, well, in rabbinic Judaism. All right. Now, let me see if I can find this real quick. I can't remember things very well. I'm sorry for that. But every single one of the statements in Isaiah 9:6 can be directly attributed to Hezekiah. And you're going to say, oh, well, I'd like to hear that. Yeah, so would I, because I don't have it memorized. So let's see if I can find I'll have to look for it. I can't find it real quick, and I apologize for that. And it's not well enough in my head to be able to do that. But when he takes a look at Isaiah 9, starting with 6, unto us a child is born, unto us a son has been given. Unto us a child has been born. Let me go to a better translation. Okay.
So basically it's past tense, not
exactly.
Tense.
I was reading from not a great translation. Okay. A child is born to us, son is given. When did Hezekiah start taking control as king? He was 7 years old. The government is upon his shoulder. Okay. When you become king, the government is on your shoulder.
Interesting. Yeah, nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
His name is, depending on how you want to split this up, Wonderful or Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Bad translation. Okay. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I wish I could remember the verses to give you proof text for what I am saying. But Hezekiah was asked to respond to something, and he gave counsel. If you take Hezekiah and translate it, it means mighty or strong God. So the mighty God is quite literally the meaning of his name.
I definitely don't want to forget, because this caller has not heard. Rabbi.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yes.
I definitely don't want to forget to briefly touch base on Alma versus Betula for him, because I think he's new to the channel, and he has not heard.
Well, his basic question was 9:6, but
right. But I asked him. I said, "Does that mean that you also believe in 7:14,
yes.
Isaiah 7, whatever for the virgin birth?" He said yes. So
I
briefly
know
hit that.
He did, but let's talk about 9:6 first.
Oh yeah, of course. But I'm just saying I don't want to forget the other though. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Okay.
So the Ale is parallel to the Yah. The Gibor is parallel to the Chazak, strong. Chazak. El Gibor, Hezekiah, it means the same thing. Okay. Now, and for every one of these epithets, there's biblical verses applied very directly to Hezekiah, and I wish I could reproduce it, but it's not going to help right now. One thing I do want to say is the term Sar Shalom, okay, which they translated as Prince of Peace. How convenient. The word Sar does not mean prince. Nasich means prince. Sar means ruler. Sarah, like Sarah, is a female ruler, but being female, they make it the diminutive and mistranslate it as princess. Doesn't mean princess. It means female ruler. Sarah, Sar. Sar Shalom means ruler of peace. And Hezekiah, for most of his reign, had peace. He was a ruler of peace. They called him an everlasting father because Hezekiah, I'm going to get this wrong, but he was in the lineage of Judah, and he fathered other kings, if I remember correctly. But if this name is supposed to apply to Jesus, then shouldn't it say everlasting son? Jesus is the son, not the father, according to Christian theology.
Oh, that's a good one. I never thought about that.
It's just they're equal. Well, no, they're not, because if you pick up the New Testament and read it, okay, it's, Jesus is asked, "Can I sit next to you?" He says, "Oh, that's not up to me to give you permission. That's only up to the Father." Okay. He says, "Not my will, but your will be done," which means his will of the Son is not the same as the will of the Father. Oh, their strength is not the same. The knowledge is not the same. I don't know. Only the Father knows. So they're not the same. They're not equal. They're not the same power. And he said he was not a Trinitarian anyway. But it also goes on to say in verse 7, the increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end. When did Jesus run a government?
Yeah.
Jesus explicitly said, "I came not to bring peace, I came to bring a sword. I came to set every man against his father, every woman against her mother, every daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and your enemies will be those of your own household."
Yeah.
What a nice guy. And remember, he didn't say this will be the effect of believing in me. He said, this is why I'm coming, not to bring peace, but to bring a sword. Okay. It says upon the throne of David. Jesus wasn't from the house of David. You got to trace lineage to the father. Jesus' father was supposedly the Holy Spirit. So Joseph's lineage becomes irrelevant, and a female lineage down to Mary, for example, becomes irrelevant because lineage in Judaism is only traced through the fathers. Your father's 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 father. Okay. Not your mother's father's father's father's. Okay. Right. So it's probably not a full answer like you'd like because I don't remember the verses that prove that every one of these epithets apply to Hezekiah.
Right.
But yeah, I'll have to find that.
That's okay. Okay. So, and again.
Right. So just a quick overview of Isaiah 7.
Thank you.
Okay. It's okay. Quickly, what's going on in Isaiah 7? You've got a king, Ahaz, who is absolutely terrified because his enemies have struck up a bargain, okay, with two other kings that are marching on his land, and he's in terror. So God comes to Isaiah and says, hey, Isaiah, Ahaz is terrified. Go do something for him so he'll stop being scared. Make him realize I'm on his side. Isaiah goes to Ahaz and says, hey, whatever sign you want from God, God is going to give you to prove to you that God is on your side and you have nothing to worry about. Ahaz is no fool. He says, I'm not going to tempt God. Okay, I'm not going to challenge God. So Isaiah, who is like me, old and tired by this time in his life, he says, buddy, if I say to you, ask for a sign, you're supposed to ask for a sign. Fine. You're not going to ask for a sign? God himself will give you a sign. What's the sign? Okay. And here you got the variation in translations. The Hebrew is explicitly clear. It says, behold, the young woman is pregnant. So if I say to you, hand me a book, that means any book at random. If I say, give me the book, that means you and I both know which book I'm talking about because I said the book. So if it's the young woman, you and I both know which woman I'm talking about. Somehow I don't think Ahaz is going to think of a woman living 700 years after Ahaz himself is dead and buried. And the text is also hara. She's already pregnant. In the days of Ahaz, this woman that they both know is already pregnant. Okay. Notice that it says that God will give you a sign. It doesn't say God is going to do a miracle for you. It says God is going to do a sign for you. What is a sign? A sign is real metal and real paint. A stop sign is real metal and real paint. It's something in the real world that points to something else. Like, hey, driver of a car, this is where you're supposed to stop. So what's the sign? The sign is the kid. And then go to chapter 8 of Isaiah. It explicitly says that Isaiah's sons are signs. So why is the kid a sign? Because, and here's another mistranslation of most texts, she shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay? Emmanuel means with us is God. Imanu, with us, El, God. But when you go from Hebrew to English, you have to add the helping word, a conjugation of the verb to be. With us is God. It's not saying that the person who has that name is God. It's saying that that person reminds you that God is on your side, that God is with us every time you see the kid. So Ahaz is wandering around the palace or whatever, and he sees the kid, and he's thinking, oh my God, these two enemy kings are going to kill me. They're going to, kill me. And he sees the kid walking in the hallway, and that kid's name is Emmanuel. With us is God. Oh yeah, that's my sign. God is with me. God is with us. God is on our side. I don't have to worry about the enemy king. That's what it means for him to be a sign. And then verse 15, it says, butter and honey shall he eat, that he knows to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the kid knows how to choose evil and refuse evil and choose good, the land that you're afraid of is going to be forsaken of both her kings. So how old is a kid before he knows how to refuse evil and choose to do good? How old is a kid when instead of nursing, he's eating butter and honey? 20? So within 20 years, this kid is going to be eating butter and honey, and he's going to know the difference between evil and good and know to choose the good. I think it's a lot younger than that, but it's not 700 years old. So the text explicitly says that the kid is going to be young at the time Ahaz doesn't have to be afraid of these two enemy kings. Now, Christians will say, dual prophecy. Well, why not triple prophecy? So not only was this fulfilled in the days of Isaiah, but it's also fulfilled in the days of Hercules or Perseus. Hercules' mother was Alcmene, a human mother, and his father was Zeus, God. Okay. Perseus' mother was Danae, and his father was, again, the god Zeus. The way that Zeus made Danae pregnant was not through the act of sex. no sex involved, kind of like a virgin birth. And so that's the second fulfillment. So Jesus becomes the third fulfillment. Why not 4 fulfillments or 350,622 fulfillments? You're going to have dual prophecy. Why not triple prophecy, quadruple prophecy, and keep going? And any religion can come along and invent a story about their God and say, see, Isaiah 7:14 is all about my God too. You can have double prophecy. You can have quadruple prophecy. Why not? So that's a quick overview of Isaiah 7.
All right.
And everybody's bored because we do that every so often.
No, it's actually, it's good for the new callers. It's important, I think, that they hear that.
Right.
So if you've got time, I know we're already at an hour, but if you've got time, I've got one more caller.
Okay.
Okay. Eli, you're live on the air. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Hey, William. Hey, Rabbi. I appreciate y'all for taking the time. I got a question on Mark 7, verse 9 through 13. So,
okay, go ahead.
All right. So Jesus is talking, and basically he's accusing the Pharisees of putting more precedent or importance on tradition than the actual commandments. So he says, you are experts at setting aside commandment of God in order to keep your tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and mother. The one who speaks evil of father or mother is certainly to be put to death. But you say, if a person says to his father or mother, whatever I have that would help you is Corban. You no longer allow him to do anything for his father or mother, thereby invalidating the word of God by your tradition. And that's basically the end of it. My question is, what the heck is going on? I thought a Corban is a sacrifice, one. And then two, this seems just like a narrative to make the Jews look bad or something.
Okay, go ahead and hang up now, Tootie, for your answer. Thank you for your call. Great question. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
You bet. Later. All right, last topic, guys.
I will use polite language. Okay. Basically, this is a way to look at all the Jews as being hypocrites and liars and bad people and whatever. What is the story about? What is it saying here? Verse 11. But you say, if a man says to his father and mother, it's Korban, that is to say, a gift, by whatsoever you might be profited by me, he shall be free. What's going on here? I'm being nice. This is a jackass. Okay. You cannot take consecrated to God stuff, okay, and use it for mundane, profane, common, everyday things. So if the parents are in need and a man says, well, everything I have is consecrated to God, he's basically coming up with an excuse not to help his parents. 12 and 13 are saying you're not allowing him to do anything for his mother or father. You're letting him get away with this. I don't know if this could be about one individual who's a creep, who's a jackass, okay? A-hole is what I really want to say. But it's used to point out hypocrisy among the Jewish people. And it's also being used to show the Jewish people as disobedient to the word of God, because a jackass like this, instead of honoring his mother and father, is trying to come up with an excuse of why he can't help his parents with material stuff, things that he owns. That's what's going on here, okay? If you want to play the game of finding somebody who's a member of a group and using that somebody because he's a jackass to exemplify the whole group, I can do it with Christians real easily for 2,024 years of Christian history, okay? Not that hard. So, if this one person in Mark is a jackass, and this is how he treats his mother and father, and other people in power, at least by this description, who knows if you can believe anything in Mark, is letting him get away with it, then he's a creep too. Pretty sure that's what's going on here.
That's what I was thinking too, kind of. All right, well, good deal. Well, we're going to call that a wrap for tonight. You guys, thank you all for tuning in. I will see you, Hashem willing, same time, same place next week.
Did you see any? We're always trying to find topics, so...
Well, we had a good night. We had a good night of questions tonight. So if you guys have any questions that you would like to have on the show, send them to me or Rabbi, either through email or Facebook Messenger. We'll be fine. The more the merrier, because that gives us more to choose from. So that's the general answer. Okay. Rabbi, thank you. Have a great night. And we'll see you guys again, same time, same place next week. Hashem willing. Peace. Shalom, everybody. Take care.
See you later.
Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaCh.com, TaNaCh.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
אני אתה אתם תמיד תמיד כולם ביד חשוב מכל חשוב